My name is Whitney Rencountre. I come from the Crow Creek Sioux tribe right here in central South Dakota, and grew up on the reservation and spent several years on and off the reservation. Then I went to Black Hill State University, and from there I taught high school Indian studies for a couple of years at Marty High School, and then for 11 years worked for Rural America Initiatives in Rapid City, South Dakota, and was in charge of the Ateapi program, the youth mentoring program there, as well as development, fundraising and developing relationships. And now my new role is I'm the Associate Director of the Indian University of North America. And we serve students all across the nation, United States, and up into Alaska and Hawaii. And we have a great program, summer program and a fall program here for students going into college. But between those times, I've also served in many leadership capacities throughout Rapid City and throughout South Dakota. And, most notably serving as the chair of the Visit Rapid City Board of Directors, and also the chair of the South Dakota Humanities Council. I was a part of Rapid City Collective Impact, the Native Leadership Circle there as well, and the Club for Boys, and the Miniluzaha Okolakichiapi Ambassadors, which for the many of you may or may not know, the Human Relations Commission, the HRC with the city of Rapid City. They had a commission, a HRC for many years, but they recently formed a MOU with the MOA group, which I was part of, essentially a group of people building relationships in our city of Rapid City, native and non-native leaders coming together to learn and understand about one another, developing relationships, because the idea about relationships matter and truly make a difference in our organizations and our communities. So these are some of the experiences that I bring that I'm very happy to share. Also, have been through many trainings on how to work with people with different personalities than you, the differing backgrounds that we have across our country, but focusing in on obviously the communities that we have here in Rapid City and beyond. So I want to thank you for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen, friends and relatives, and I hope that I can, at least be a resource. There's many resources, but I think if it starts at some place, a lot of times, the more people we interact with, the more perspectives that we understand and learn that there are good and bad in every culture, every community, that it's up to us to make the decision on what we want to apply to our own organizations, our own companies, our own efforts, grassroots organizations, whatever it may be. We hope that we can continue to build better relationships for the benefit of our youth and our children, but especially for our community to make it a better place. So here we go. I'm going to kind of start things off here. What I've done and with the MOA group, which is the Miniluzaha Okolakichiapi Ambassadors, we had a joint venture with Carl Jegris and the police force and many others that we took a trip out to the Museum of Tolerance out in Los Angeles. And for many of you that do not know what the Museum of Tolerance is, it's a facility dedicated to the Holocaust. It's dedicated to the civil rights movement. It's dedicated to just kind of understanding some of the historical things that have impacted our world. And so being part of that group, to go there to learn on some of the efforts and the evidence and learning about historically what took place in our world, is really beneficial. And it truly made an impact on a lot of us that attended this. And so two of the individuals that I recently met with are Dan Tribby, the general manager of Prairie Edge, and then Jim White, the owner of SoundPro. And also Dan and Jim have been involved in the chamber of Visit Rapid City, of Elevate, and many other community efforts in Rapid City. And so they have a breadth of experience and knowledge and understanding. And on this trip to the Museum of Tolerance with Jim and then also with Dan at separate occasions, we had conversations and discussing Indigenous, Native American issues and challenges in our community. And from listening to Dan and Jim, I've learned a great deal about how they approach working with the Indigenous culture in the workplace. And so that's kind of what the first part of this presentation today is going to be about, just kind of the roundtable discussion that we had. And keep in mind that this is going to be an ongoing effort that I will be reaching out to different folks in our community and you know, picking their brain and trying to come up with some best practices and hopefully to have an impact on our community in a positive light and build better relationship between cultures. That's really the whole goal is that's how you grow. A lot of times we wait until things take place and a negative thing happens, and then we try to sit down, but by the time we actually sit down and have conversations, you know, time has really passed us by. So that's what I'm going to start with today. Dan, I, and Jim, we sat down and had lunch and we had some conversations. So that's kind of how I'm going to start out this presentation. And then we're going to get into one of the other trainings I've had throughout the years is a training on personalities. And so I think a lot of times when we work with a group of individuals or a group of people, we don't approach it in terms of, you know, as a human being effort. We sometimes will look at the differences, whether that be religious or political or economic or race or whatever it is. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we view things that way. Instead, if we look at it more in the human interactions and how personalities perceive one another in communications, we then can build a better workplace and community and organizations that we have. So for those of you that may not know Dan Tribby, he's the general manager of Prairie Edge, and he's been there for many years. Here's a quote I wanted to share with you as we open up. Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may not remember. Involve me and I'll understand. And so just be thinking about that as we go out today. One of the things when I do my presentations, I ask that you just open up your mind, open up your heart to hopefully to attain some information, hopefully to have an open mind. And when you're learning about some of the things we talk about today, that's all we'd like to ask of you today. So, all right, moving on to the next slide. I'm going to show you, for those of you that may not know Dan and Jim, here's a picture of Dan Tribby, once again, many, many years as the general manager of Prairie Edge and involved in many things downtown Rapid City. And then Jim White, owner of Sound Pro. And, you know, how ironic, Jim's holding a picture of the Elevate magazine right there as well. So, all right. So, Dan, Jim, and I, once again, we had a roundtable discussion, and I'm still kind of disseminating some of the things that we discussed and talked about, but we had a great discussion. And one of the reasons why I selected Dan and Jim is because they have a lot of experience through the years of employing relatives from the indigenous population, notably the Lakota people, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people that live in this area, the area tribes. And we had a discussion in talking about how in Rapid City you see, you know, a lot of times our industries will employ people from overseas. You know, there's the program, the overseas program, that exchange program that they'll bring people here from all over the world to work in the Black Hills during the busy times in our communities. And we discussed on how, you know, we could probably work towards expanding that to include our area reservations. And if we can develop some communication skills, if we can develop some recruitment skills and helping our organizations to understand how you can be successful in these efforts. So some of the key components when Dan, Jim, and I were visiting, we kind of we started out in a place that one of the successful components of developing a successful organization or environment or culture of success obviously that starts with the leadership. And, when I say the first key component is it all starts with the culture of that organization. Really what that's talking about is if the CEO or the president or the executive director or whoever that may be, if they develop a culture that that is successful, if they have an open mind and are working with a team to develop better communication and a culture that is open to maybe some of the different backgrounds of the individuals that work for them. That's really a key component in any organization, regardless of who you serve and who you work for. So the culture has to be established in terms of consistency, in terms of hard work and determination and the willingness to involve those prospective employees that may come work for you. As long as you have the culture of success established, regardless of who you hire or who you do provide outreach to, that truly makes a difference. So another key component that we discussed was having the knowledge of Indigenous culture helps when working with employees. So that truly makes a difference as well. And I say that, obviously want to say thank you to Rachel and the team. Obviously, as I discuss here, please feel free to ask questions at any time throughout this presentation. We want this to be an opportunity to ask questions and have thoughtful dialogue. So thank you for reminding us of that, Rachel. So yeah, absolutely. If at any time anyone has a question, feel free to put it in the chat box or wherever you would like. If you want to discuss it, we can, but because sometimes if you wait till the end, you'll forget your question. So feel free to drop those in the chat box and I'll do my best after a certain thought, then I'll answer those at that time. So having knowledge of Indigenous culture helps when working with employees. No one is really required to learn more about the Indigenous culture. However, it will help if and when you have Indigenous population, whether you're serving them or whether that you have some employees with the backgrounds or whatever it may be. And one of the things that we try to share with people is that we can establish one way or the highway kind of leadership, and that's okay. That if that works for your organization, and that's the way you run your organization, that's your decision and your choice. And however, if you want to expand your reach, if you want to allow for a bigger reach in terms of employees or prospective employees, and you want to include the Indigenous culture, and we certainly would hope that you would be willing to, because when Dan and Jim and I discussed, Dan and Jim talked about, especially a lot of the Indigenous employees that they've had as they've worked with them through the many years, have truly become some of the most loyal and hardworking employees. And a lot of times it's just getting through that initial barrier at times of not really understanding one another. So having the knowledge of Indigenous culture helps in terms of learning about maybe if this individual is heavily involved in the cultural ceremonies, when there's certain times of the year when ceremonies take place and certain times when they would want to go back to their community to be part of those ceremonies. And so as long as that is discussed and the conversation is there and there's a willingness there for you to allow for that time, and it's just a short period of time, and coming up with some boundaries around that. Obviously, discussion is key. You as the employee or the organization have to have your own way of doing things in terms of allowing for things to happen. But at the same time, you have those boundaries, and you establish those, and that's kind of where you stay. So having said that, we have a question here. Whitney, what is the best way for people to learn about the culture? Thank you for that question. I appreciate that. So before we go on to the next key component, I always say, you can do your best. You can read books. There are a lot of books out there that will teach you. Joseph Marshall III has a lot of books that we use at a lot of universities and educational systems. So he would be someone we would recommend that you would read so you can understand and have a better understanding of the knowledge, especially in our local area, because he's from the Rosebud Reservation. He's a descendant of Crazy Horse, and he has a lot of that knowledge and understanding. Obviously, Black Elk Speaks is another book that we would recommend to read. And there's the list goes on and on about education. And if you were able to, if you stop down there to see Dan Tribby, or you go to the Birdcage, or you stop over there at Racing Magpie, and many others, there's a lot of books from Indigenous artists that will help you try to understand and have knowledge. However, that does not replace the best way to learn and understand about the other cultures. And that is to sit down and have discussion with folks with other cultures, especially if you're working with Indigenous populations, or if you're you're employing Indigenous populations, or providing services, or you just want to get to know more to be able to have a well-rounded view of our Indigenous population in the area or beyond. Unfortunately, we're not there yet in our public school systems to be able to teach and learn more about Native American history and culture. But someday we will, and we're working towards that. A lot of people are putting forth efforts to include the Indigenous culture and perspectives in the public school systems. Now, we say that because it's not necessarily, when you learn about the culture and such, is to learn about who's right and who's wrong. By no means. It's always about gaining the knowledge and having a well-rounded view. It's always best, a lot of times I think we kind of stay in our own cocoon, and we like to be comfortable in our own cocoon and kind of have our own knowledge and the things that we were taught growing up, or whatever group we are around each and every day. However, you have a better worldview if you can be objective, if you can understand and learn about other cultures that are out there. But especially here in South Dakota, we have such a rich culture in the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota culture, that if you sit down with individuals, have coffee, get to know some of the people here in our community and beyond, and develop those relationships, because relationships are really the key to having a better understanding. Just like, for example, one of the things that we always do is, a lot of times when it comes to family, our personal families, a lot of times we'll be a little more cognizant, we'll be a little more understanding if they make mistakes or they do something wrong, or maybe they're teaching us some things. We're a little more open-minded. But if it's somebody that we don't care about or want to learn about, and so on and so forth, we tend to be a little colder. So that's why having these relationships and having a better understanding, having a willingness, is really where it starts. So very good question. Next key component that Dan and Jim and I kind of talked about was communication and expectations should be clearly established. A lot of times, what I've seen in a lot of organizations that I've had the benefit of I've had the blessing to be able to speak to, a lot of times there's always, we don't put enough time and effort, energy into communication up front. A lot of times when we discuss things, or something happens in our community or in our organization and it's a mistake, or if it's racially motivated, or if it's culturally motivated, or if it's a difference in opinion and it leads to some uproar, a lot of times we wait for that to happen. But by then it's almost too late, because then you're just putting out a fire, or you're just trying to react. And we always share that if you have preparation, if you have communication, if you have developed your own culture, your own environment of success, you will then learn that communication is an ongoing thing. Sitting down and having discussions between supervisors or employees or groups of individuals or whoever it is within your organization, if you take the time to have discussions and to not necessarily don't wait and say they should already know. We all know that's not a good way to view. That's not a well-rounded, healthy view, because a lot of folks need communication. There are some that don't, but for the most part, when you put the time, effort, energy to practice, when it's your common practice to communicate and have expectations, you then build a culture of success. Because anybody that comes to work for you, regardless of their background, regardless of where they come from, they will see that you have something clearly stated, that you have a culture of success, that communication is evident, that you have a willingness to sit down and work through any of the misunderstandings. And then you don't have to be putting out those fires. Our fires won't arise because you have consistency across the board. And so communications and expectations should be clearly established, regardless of background, whoever comes to work for you. If you have that, they will either fit in and they will find their place and they will buy into that. Or if they figure that it's not for them, they will then move on. A lot of times that will happen on their own. They'll make their own decision on that. However, if we don't have that, then that's when we kind of have to deal with some of the repercussions. And once again, if you guys have any questions or you want to add something, feel free to put it in the chat. The next key component, Dan, Tribby, and Jim and I, kind of discussed was understanding there is good and bad in every culture. So stay away from labeling. A lot of times we cannot help what we are taught from people that are older than us, regardless if they're our relative or somebody that's a mentor or somebody that we spend a lot of time around. If the individuals that are in charge or have influence, if they share things with you that it's just their own opinion, whether it's good or bad, it's going to have an impact on you. But once we start labeling groups, once we start labeling individuals from other cultures, other backgrounds, or even someone different religiously or someone different politically, whatever it may be, if we label individuals, every single person within that culture, that's when we have to deal with those repercussions once again, because we will not spend time to get to know one another. Not everybody in opposing cultures, opposing viewpoints, I guess is a better way to put it, or opposing religions or opposing, many other aspects of our culture is bad or good. There's good and bad in every culture, every political environment, every race. And so it's important for us to develop our understanding of being open and being willing to see who comes through that door, and if they fit within the organization, or giving them the time to get to know them first. But if you lead, when you hire somebody or when you have someone join your organization or you're providing services to people, if you lead with these values of the organization, if you lead with the things that are deep rooted in terms of the hard work and dedication and wanting to be successful, and you are open to that in terms of communicating that with your staff, they will buy in. And many of you probably already know that. So it's just keeping that in the forefront. Another key component is give every staff a fair shot and invest time in helping staff understand the expectations that is set for them. A lot of times if we label, we get somebody in that's one of the labels, that negative labels, negative connotations. We already expect them to fail, or we already have these expectations that it's not going to work out, and so on and so forth. Then that's probably what's going to happen, And so it's important for us to give everybody a fair shot in terms of investing time in them and learning and allowing them to hopefully adjust and adapt to the culture of success that you have in your organization. However, if we don't take that approach, then we will be that self-fulfilling organization of failure, and will be hard to find employees to fit within your organization. But if you have it established, things will work out better. Dan specifically shared that his many Indigenous staff have been around for years and have become very loyal to the work of his company, which many of you know. Dan's is the general manager for many years at the Prairie Edge, and he has some of the staff that have been there since the inception, some that have been there for 20, 30 years, 10 years, and very loyal. And he has this line of open communication with them. And so continuing that understanding has been very valuable. and something that he would like to share with other organizations in our community as well. And Jim has learned that communication can be misconstrued at times, so clear communication is needed. One of the things that I shared as an individual coming from a reservation and moving to Rapid City and working here in Rapid City, a lot of the labels, a lot of the things that the negative connotation about Native Americans that may go around in different communities across our country. You know, a lot of times if you're coming into that kind of environment, you can tell. I mean, it's evident. And a lot of times communication isn't very good, and you don't know what's going on, and they're kind of watching and waiting to see how you respond. Jim and Dan and myself believe that if from the get-go, you have it established that you want success, and if this individual that's coming in, you're going to give them every shot, every chance to be successful, and you're going to be open with that communication, and you're going to expect them to do well, and you're going to have these expectations, but at the same time, you're still going to be willing to listen to them as an individual. You know, by saying that, sometimes our indigenous culture, our indigenous peoples that come into certain organizations, they may not feel welcome. They may not have the confidence that the cultural beliefs are going to be understood, or the background that they come from will be understood, or some of the things that you might see within our communities and the fractured relationships at times may have an impact on their experience and within that organization. However, if you do have that culture of success and that culture of openness in terms of regardless of the background, you want them to buy into the success, they can tell. Individuals will be able to experience that and see that. So that truly makes a difference. For example, Jim talked about an employee that called in one day and was having some issues early on during COVID and so on and so forth. And so, you know, Jim kind of mentioned, hey, okay, well, we'll talk or thanks for calling me, whatever, we'll talk tomorrow. And the employee, Jim kind of shared that the employee thought that Jim meant stop in and come see me tomorrow. We got to talk. But in reality, Jim was just kind of sharing that we'll see you, we'll talk tomorrow, basically. I'll see you, and when you're working, we'll have conversation or communication, but it wasn't based upon like a principal saying, come to my office first thing tomorrow morning, or a supervisor. You know, it was more of, so just that little small difference sometimes can make all the difference in the world. So when individuals come in and have conversations, and if you don't develop and learn about one another, the tendencies of your employees, the tendencies, and a lot of the things that they share, you know, you can misconstrue it. Little things could be misunderstood. And I think this day and age with social media, especially, a lot of things could be taken out of context and misunderstood. And it could develop, you know, it can turn into something that could have been prevented had clear communication or discussion or asking questions was established. So establish a healthy work environment and work to dispel any preconceived notions. So the bottom line is having that openness, that willingness to develop an environment, a culture of success. So, all right. So let's see here. I'm gonna see if I can close out of this and open up my next. But once again, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. And let's see here. Got to open up another, my other PowerPoint. All right. Let's see here. So this one here is the PowerPoint that it's kind of the highlight of our of what this is. Let's see here. Can everybody see this okay? It says your screen sharing is paused. I want to make sure that you can see that. Let's see if this works. Okay, here we go. All right, creating a culture of success and solutions. So, you know, this was when I worked with tribal partners and communities, you know, when I worked for Rural America Initiatives, South Dakota Humanities Council, and the MOA, and other groups. These are some of the things I've learned through the trainings that I've attended and that I've, you know, established. So creating a culture of success. First, we must understand and learn about the different personality types of people that we work with. The American dream has always been focused on individual success. However, on the other side of things, the Native American culture is grounded in community success, selfless acts, and making sure the community is taken care of. How do we combine these ideas to create a culture of success? So that's one of the things that, historically, as a lot of the leaders within the indigenous Native American communities shared, that when a lot of the changes took place historically for the indigenous people, they would share that the one way to adjust and adapt to the new society that we're living in is to take the good things that you learn from other cultures or other races or other people that are different in terms of your ideas, and utilize the good and then discard the bad things. There's good and bad in every culture, every belief, the way we think. If we could just utilize all the good things and combine those to help establish a better community, we would all benefit from that. So how do we combine these ideas? There are 4 personality types, and maybe some of you understand these things, but it really helped me to understand the different personality types. And so when you can get past culture, when you can get past religious differences, when you can get past political differences, when you can get past all these things at times that we close our minds off to just because we think they're different, so they're going to behave this way, they're going to act this way. And then our own preconceived notions come out, and then we become the divider without realizing it, without giving folks that think different than us a chance. And so it helps us to understand the different personality types, and then how we can work together to achieve the goals that we have set in our organization. So the first personality type, and many of you might have taken the Myers-Briggs test, and you understand and learn. So when you can get past the cultural or the differences in race or whatever it may be, then you can understand that every human being, regardless of their background, belief system, or whatever it is, generally has a personality type. And so if you can understand those things, you can have better communication. For example, when Jim White and his employee had this conversation, maybe they had different personalities, so they perceived we'll talk tomorrow as a different outcome or a different expectation. One personality type may just say that in just walking by. Other people may say, well, that's a logical thing, so we must have to follow through with that. There's got to be a reason he said that. So these different personality types will intermingle, and at times miscommunication happens. So that's a big part of the challenges we face. So the type A, or also known as the director or the guardian, this kind of personality, regardless of who they are, they like to be in charge. They like to be in control of the environment and their lives. They're normally not very well detail-oriented, choosing to delegate details to others. They're usually very goal-oriented and practical in their solutions, and arriving at their solutions and goals will entail no-nonsense, bottom-line approach. And so keep in mind, not everybody, just because they have parts of this personality doesn't mean every single part of these traits are, a lot of times we can have different personality types intermingled, or we'll take a little bit here from there. So what are the type A personality strengths? So it's good to understand. So somebody that fits this personality type within your organization or within your employee group or whoever you're working with, if you can understand some of these strengths, it would help you as you're working with them. First of all, they embrace change. They like to take charge, fast-paced, entrepreneurial, direct management style. They're very ambitious. They work well independently, very passionate, demands maximum freedom, good administrative skills, highly competitive, good delegation skills, and multitasking. What do type A personality traits look like at work? Well, they'll be very goal-oriented, risk-taking, good under stress. Type A personalities don't like a lot of restraints or restrictions placed on them. Instead, they prefer to work independently and set their own schedules. Since they often tend to be workaholics, it's not unusual to see them put in whatever time and effort it takes to accomplish their goals, regardless of the workday or the hours set. They may seem impatient at times, especially if they believe someone is spending too much time going over details with them or impeding the successful completion of whatever goal or project they're focusing on at the moment. So figure it out, get the job done. A lot of times they'll share that. While the type B personality, the socializer or the artisan, is also kind of some of the understanding the personality type. The type B personality is very outgoing, energetic, and fast-paced. Individual who likes to be around people and enjoys being the center of attention at work or wherever they function they're part of. They're good relationship builders, and most people like them right away. The driving need is for approval, so they try to like everyone in hopes that everyone will like them too. Compliments and acknowledgments of their achievements, words of admiration, and even applause from groups will be the most important thing that you can do for them. So we say these things because some people need a little extra reminder that they're doing well. And if you're working with a personality type that's a socializer, artisan, they're really outgoing and energetic. If you give them compliments and you acknowledge their achievements, that will go a long way in terms of their work, the culture of success within your organization. What are type B personality strengths? Well, they're enthusiasm, fun-loving, persuasiveness, easily liked by most people, friendliness, charismatic, idea person, motivator, they're a dreamer, lighthearted, people-oriented, spontaneous, faster pace, and self-confident. What do type B personality traits look like at work? Well, they're relationship oriented. They like working with people, outgoing, enthusiastic. Some of the strengths you can count on from type B personality are their enthusiasm, outgoing behavior, friendliness towards others, and their ability to persuade even the most skeptical of people. They tend to be dreamers and can often turn those dreams into very practical ideas in the workplace. Type C personality, more of a thinker, a scientist. The type C personality is a very detail-oriented individual who likes to be involved in things that are controlled and stable. They're interested in accuracy, rationality, and logic. People who can't seem to control their emotions will bother them because type C personalities believe in being emotional makes objectivity difficult and perhaps even impossible at times. They also dislike being around people who are full of hype since they desire facts, accuracy, and logic. Other people's emotions may not be a priority for them as they tend to strive for the facts and let the chips fall where they may. Type C personality strengths, accuracy, creative, dependable, imaginative, independent, detail-oriented, follow through, plays by the rules, organized, and thoughtful. What are some of the type C personality weaknesses? Well, they worry about progress. They can appear unsocial, critical. Could be very critical towards other people. Likes to do things their own way, detached behavior, can see the glass half empty, skeptical, disbelieving, may never have personal expectations met, disengagement. What do type C personality traits look like at work? Well, detail-oriented, as we said, logical, prepared. Type C personalities tend to be quite controlling, both of themselves and others. They don't like things to get out of hand and may not appear very expressive at times because they don't really want themselves to display a lot of emotion. They're very outcome-driven and will be sticklers for following procedures and protocol and getting the job done. They're careful, resourceful, and above all, excellent thinkers who will look at all aspects of an issue before taking a stand. Once they take a stand on an issue, though, they'll have the facts to back it up. So anyone who challenges them better be prepared. They like their jobs and to be clearly defined and want to know exactly what's expected of them. Knowing these facts, they will be able to prioritize their tasks and see them through to completion. Type D personality, supporter, philosophers, sometimes known as type D personality. They take a slower pace, easier pace towards their work and in life in general. They seek scrutiny and longevity in their job, or excuse me, security and longevity in their job, and are very happy during the repetitive task, day in and day out. The repetition allows them to become very skilled in what they do. Likewise, they will like it if the rules change a lot, and that's contrary to their desire to minimize change and stick with what they know works. For type D personality, even though the current may be unpleasant, they were worried that the unknown may be even worse. Type D personality strengths: low-key, caring, sincere, compassionate, stable, fair and equitable, calm, unimposing, looks approachable, dependable, good at routines or repetitive tasks. Type D personality weaknesses: they don't like to speak up, easily used by others, going along with what they don't agree with, uncomfortable with constant change, going along to avoid confrontation, less assertive, gets hurt feelings, shy and resistant to change. What do they look like at work? Well, they're task-oriented, stabilizing, cautious. They seek to respect. They seek the respect, sincere admiration, and acceptance of others. Type D personality will gladly work hard to please the people they work for, as long as they feel appreciated and receive plenty of reassurance that they're needed. They need that sense of security. Type D personalities often think that type A personalities is crazy for taking too many risks and not showing much concern for security and longevity. Coming up with solutions when working with different cultures. So for myself, when I was learning about the different personalities as a supervisor myself, as someone that worked with a lot of different people in the city of Rapid City and beyond, when I first learned about, we got in a room and we actually did a training in person and learned about the different personality types, and we had these discussions. And that was it. That's how we started this training that I attended in California. And we got broken up into different parts of the room. And we learned about all these backgrounds and kind of went around the room, and we pasted things on the wall. We learned about different cultures and different personalities. And then we broke for the day. And I remember being in my hotel room that night, and I was like, oh my goodness, learning about all these different personalities, it was almost defeating a little bit, because I was thinking, well, what if you have a certain leadership or a certain style, and you go to do presentations, or you are developing partnerships, or you're presenting to a group of people or what have you, but you don't have the personality type that fits in with everybody there or most there, or whatever it may be. And so I was stumped that night. I was thinking, what's the answers? Well, it was the next day that we learned that if you can learn about the different personality types that you may work with, you can learn a little bit about this group likes to have things to fidget with on the table. This group likes a PowerPoint. These guys like to be on time. These guys just want extra time to get things done. So you have all kinds of different tools. If you can develop more tools to work with the different personality types, it'll benefit you and your organization. So the most important thing to understand is to never lower expectations of others just because you think that they cannot meet expectations. It's important to have high expectations. It's important to believe. It's important to instill and have good boundaries and communication, and what I talked about before as far as communication and doing the work up front, so that you will benefit in the long term. Whereas if you wait for things to happen, then you have to discipline, and then you have to come up with a reaction. Then I think in essence, that's almost too late. So it's important for us to have these communications and conversations of the most important thing is the never low expectations, as long as that's communicated up front and more often. Educating ourselves is key about the different cultures, backgrounds, personalities that we work with. learning and understanding what helps, what makes them go, what motivates them, and ourselves even, and how does our personality going to hurt another personality or have a disagreement and what have you. Obviously we talk about organizations at times staying out of, being anonymous in terms of what happens in public, instead just focusing on what we do and taking care and protecting what we build and being careful and helping our staff understand that they represent our company, our organization, our people that we work with. So, to stay out of judging and stay out of, the conflicts, and so we can protect the integrity of our organizations, And so education is key. Learning about the challenges and success of indigenous cultures is important. For example, I talk about hunting the buffalo. When you learn about the buffalo, there's an elder by the name of Chris Eaglehawk, and he talked to us about, the natural tendencies of the buffalo herds. A lot of times when danger approaches the buffalo herds, the children and the elders will go in the middle, and then the women will be on the outside circle protecting them, and then the men on the outside of that circle protecting within. And then if there is danger is imminent, then the buffalo, the head of the buffalo will stomp their hoof and face that danger. Or if a blizzard comes, they will go through the blizzard and face that blizzard. They won't shy away from conflict and challenges that come their way to protect the betterment of their people. And so, or if somebody gets too close during the Sturgis bike rallies, they might steal your pants. So be very careful of the buffalo. Communication is important. Also, learning how to understand and communicate without negative stereotypes. Just like we talked about before, establishing clear understanding of one another and not allowing stereotypes and labels to infiltrate your organizations is very important for the success and betterment of and being professional, being objective, and taking other people's word for it, instead doing your own work to research and understand. Developing solutions that reach the many personality types and cultures, which, as I said, the more tools you have in the toolbox, the more you'll be able to work with all the different personalities, regardless of the background, regardless of where they come from. The more tools you have, the better that you'll understand. And in education, we always say IEP. Every student has an individualized work plan. A lot of times we don't want to spend any time on doing that. We say we just want people to do their jobs and so on and so forth, exactly the way I want them to. But I think when, in essence, and that's okay, that's your choice. However, I think if you will lower the ceiling of your success within your organization if you don't have an IEP in terms of, yes, it's good to have all the basic hard work, consistency, being on time, all these things, the values of your culture, but at the same time, having an individualized plan and how that particular individual meets your expectations. That's where the success applies. If you can do that, if you can develop solutions and you can develop better communication, you will benefit from that in the long run. The approach, we talk about the MOA, the group that I've been a part of since 2014. Karen Mortimer, many others, Bill May, Marnie Herman, many others across our community, native and non-native, of all cultures, all backgrounds. And we came up with this approach called BEAM, Bridging Cultures, educating ourselves and others, advocating, modeling respectful behaviors. And it was Marnie Herman who came up with this approach. And that's something that we try to share with others and to try to build better relationships. We approach our work in respectful, honest, and a safe manner. We're strengthening relationships by acting intentionally to build up our community. Human capital in the form of a leadership and coaching, mentorship is essential to forward movement. Authentic relationships, respectful tone, and awareness of history and place. We can feel movement and things quietly in motion. Bridging cultures. The key to bridging cultures is to learn about other cultures. And who we work with, and while combining our own experiences to open the lines of communication. For example, tribal partners have a unique view based upon their experiences and traditions and history. Every tribe has their own language, values, traditions, and relationship to the land across the nation. Over 560 federally recognized tribes have their own traditional ways. Not every individual is the same across all tribes, and so it's important for us to understand and learn that most tribes across the United States have moved from their original land base and have developed a new connection to the land that they currently inhabit. Educating ourselves and others. When we learn about each of our tribal partners, our relatives amongst the living in the tribes, we gain a better understanding of them. Most tribes have undergone a lot of challenges and changes historically. So if we can show a willingness to learn and understand that the tribal communities then then we have more success in working with them. In our country, most Americans reach for the American dream, which is centered around an individual success. However, most tribes base their success on how the whole community is. If they're safe, they're taken care of, and doing service work is so important. If we can at least learn the facts and the history of tribal partners, we can benefit from the tools gained along the way. Advocating. With these relationships forged, we are generating ideas, testing and implementing solutions, and collaborating for a sustainable future. Native and non-Native leaders are making a difference through solid relationships. When we are solution-oriented, we will have more success with our new relationships. Sometimes we may have to agree to disagree. And if someone is not ready to work, we have to go on to the next person or in our own direction, at times. Ultimately, we can benefit from the work put towards understanding how our relationships can improve from work that we are committed to and the experiences that we have with other people. We spend time to make things better. If we spend time to make things better, then we benefit into the future. As I said, you put the work up front and you continue that continuously, your organization community would be a lot more successful and better for that. Modeling respectful behaviors. We are putting our actions and words forward to demonstrate behavior that we want to see in others. We strive to bring what we've learned and experiences we've gained into our personal and professional lives. When working with tribal partners, it is important to understand that their aggression isn't aimed at us, instead at the system that has brought hardships. Even though we may not be responsible for these hardships, we all have to do what all we have to do is acknowledge, even if not disagree, then we can redirect some of those issues. We have a question here. Being from a different tribe than one in our area, Oglala, has it ever been a challenge for you? As you mentioned, all tribes are different, so I was curious if that has ever created issues for you or others. Hope I'm asking this in the right way. So yeah, good question here. This question talks about being from a tribe other than one in the area. For example, Northern Cheyenne is west of us over here, the Lame Deer, Montana. We have the Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara, the MHA Nation up there in North Dakota, the Oglala Sioux Tribe and Rosebud Sioux Tribe, close by here, Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe and Standing Rock. And then as we get further away, we've got the Crow Creek Sioux Tribe where I'm from, and then Lower Brule, and then you go on and beyond. Yeah, every tribe has their own viewpoints and historical events and history that matter, the land and relationship. And, has it ever created issues for you and others? I think, there are differences in opinions, differences in viewpoints and so on and so forth, but that's okay. I think the understanding is to learn, and the more we can understand some of the things that are not taught in our public school books, but are the facts of our history, the better. And so that's what the MOA group has done well, is getting Native and non-Native leaders and different personalities, different backgrounds together to learn with intent to build better relationships. I think that's really what will help us in our community. So good question there. All right, so that pretty much brings us to the end of the presentation. Kind of went through that a little quicker. Usually go a little bit longer, 15 minutes longer, and then we have questions. But now I guess we can open it up to any discussions or questions that may arise, and you do not have to use the video or the voice unless you want to. I don't know how that works with the webinar, but feel free at this time to answer or to pose any questions in the chat box, and I'll do my best to answer those. Or if Rachel and the team have anything else to maybe add after having that conversation that we just had, or maybe some points that you'd like to highlight. I'm always open to that, and it's helpful to have dialogue with those that are listening in, or any questions or concerns, comments that you may have. So any questions? Okay, so we have a question here. Should an organization have their work culture physically written somewhere? Yes, Liz, that is, obviously your handbook, which, employee handbook, or if you're serving people or different facets of your community, that culture is very important. And definitely, if you have a handbook, or if you have policy manuals, or whatever you may be, it's important to have it written down in those handbooks or policy manuals, or whatever it may be. But it's also, as your organization grows, it's also important to add to that, to make possible additions and changes as our environments change, as we grow, as our organization grows, as it changes, as we learn from other people and gain more experience. It is important to continue to make changes to that work culture that is physically written somewhere, like you talked about in your handbook, or your owner's, the manual of that goes out to all the employees, so that they clearly see that it's stated. But having said that, as we just learned today, and many of you probably already knew this, you have different personality types. So there's a lot of personality types that will take and read that employee handbook and do a good job in deciphering that and translating that into the workplace. However, you're going to have some that do not like to sit down and read through those things. As I said in the quote in the beginning, you can show me, you can, tell me, you might, but you'll forget those things, and so, but if you involve me, that's how you create lasting change. So taking the time to translate what's written down in that work culture, so to speak, or that work environment, translating it and sharing it in different ways, and as you train your staff, would greatly benefit. So thank you for that question. Richard here asks, is it possible to get my contact information? Great presentation. Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. Let's see if I can put my contact information in the chat box here. All right, so I put my contact information in the chat box, and if you miss it or you forget to write it down, you can reach out to Elevate, reach out to Rachel and the team, and they can also pass on my contact information if anybody else would like that as well. So with that, I would like to thank you all. If there isn't any more questions, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar. And I hope any of the information might be of service or a way to help you in any way. But thank you to each and every one of you for attending today.